G'day folks, today we've got something different yet again. It's a firearm which, as you can see, is somewhat incomplete and very much in need of restoration work to bring it back to its original condition, but it's a firearm which tells an important part of the Lee-Enfield story. It's an example of one of the first of the Lee-Enfield carbines, approved in 1896. This particular example was manufactured in 1897. Its history is very much unknown until recent years, and it's only this year become available to ensure that it will have a future restored, giving credit to the people who used these firearms during the Boer War. As usual, this video wouldn't be possible without the groundbreaking work of Ian Skennerton, the Lee-Enfield, as seen below, from 2007. If you've got anything to do with Lee-Enfield rifles or an interest, get a copy of this book. Very highly recommended. So we'll have a closer look at this firearm, seeing some of the interesting features of these carbines and seeing exactly what needs to be done to get it back to its proper state. Now, the first thing that you'll notice as we look down the right-hand side of this carbine is that it's missing its top wood, it's missing its handguard. These carbines had a full-length handguard which extended from just behind the foresight to just in front of the rear sight. We don't know where the one from this firearm is, but I've got a bit of a theory behind that. As we move further down, we'll see the rear sight, and I'll have a closer look at that shortly. And as we move back towards the receiver area, we'll see some fairly interesting points about these firearms. The first point of difference between these carbines and the rifles that springs to mind when I look at the general receiver area is the bolt handle. As you can see, the handle is swept slightly forward and the knob on the end of the handle is flattened. This is one of the features that helped reduce protuberances because these carbines were carried in leather buckets on the saddles and they were meant to be drawn out in a hurry, so the fewer things sticking out the better. The second point is the magazine, which you don't see much of. This is a 6-round double-stacked magazine, and it's different from the 10-round double-stacked mag that the rifles had. Again, this was something that meant that it was more suitable for mounted, for cavalry use, for which these firearms were designed. One thing that we notice here is that this carbine is missing the dust cover on the bolt. You can see the two lugs there for it. That's something that I hope to rectify fairly soon because that was an important feature of all of the early Lee, or most of the early Lee rifles. Now, when I mentioned before that this was the first of the Lee-Enfield carbines, that was a very slight play on words because there had been some Lee-Metford carbines prior to this. And looking at the firearm, one of the differences that we see is the E on the Knox form there, which indicates that this barrel is Enfield type rifling. We'll notice also that it has what looks to be a standard long tom rear sight, but this one has graduated to 2,000 yards rather than 1,800 yards. Now, this is a comparison of the 6-round carbine magazine on the left and the 10-round rifle magazine on the right. Both of these examples need a bit of work, but you can just see the basic differences there. This carbine has the standard cocking piece mounted safety, which was a feature of various types from about 1895 onwards. And as we move down the buttstock, we see that it has Cedric Ryan, Boer War 1897. Now, the Boer War, as it's known in Australia, or the Second Boer War, or the Anglo-Boer War, or the South African War, as it's variously known, went from 1899 to 1902, so we're not sure why 1897 is marked. Could be because that's the date of the firearm, could be because whoever told the story when the firearm was handed over to its previous owners thought that that was correct, but that's something that we're unsure of. Looking at the stock disc, we see 6D/782. Now I believe that this refers to the 6th Inniskillin Dragoons, a cavalry unit of the British Army dating back to the late 1600s. I know that the New South Wales Mounted Rifles served alongside elements of the 6th Inniskillin Dragoons in various engagements, including Robertson's Column, I think. So it's possible that this firearm came into Australian hands around or after one of those engagements, but we'll never know. This particular firearm also has a rear sling swivel, doesn't have one on the front. Now, I believe that most of the cavalry carbines didn't have slings, obviously because you're taking them in and out of the bucket on the saddle, so I'm not sure why this one does. I've seen a couple of photos, including one in Mr. Skennerton's work showing LEC I carbines with front and rear slings, but this one appears to be mounted further back than the ones in the photos that I've seen, and this led me to wonder whether this was actually a butt from a rifle. Don't believe so, because I don't think the equivalent rifles had the stock discs, and I believe that the carbines only had the short tang, which on the top there, which was different from the longer tangs of the rifles. Looking at the left-hand side of this carbine, you can see that, yeah, we need to do a fair bit of work. You can see one of the features of the LEC I, which is the hole in the front for the clearing rod. Now, the deletion of the clearing rod in 1899 led to the LEC I Star, which didn't have the hole. But that's the main difference. In addition to the missing top wood of this carbine, we see a big brass band here, which was probably intended to hold everything together, because this carbine, as you can see, has been chopped. So it looks like at some stage someone on the farm has cut the front wood off to make it a little handier, but not having the handguard or the original band left, someone has fabricated this rather ingenious, if somewhat homemade, band to hold everything together. And you can see the Mauser style clip underneath there, which was originally holding the band on and in place. Now on the butt socket, this wrist, we see the Royal Cipher over VR for Queen Victoria, then Enfield 1897 LEC I, indicating that it was made at Enfield in 1897, and it's a Lee-Enfield Carbine 1. Now on the left-hand side of the butt, there are no markings. There's one of the standard Enfield stamps on the right-hand side, but it's too faint to read. So all in all, a very interesting firearm. Don't know much about its story. We do know that it spent a few years in the hands of a small local history museum in country Australia, and that we believe is where the Cedric Ryan Boer War 1897 markings were painted on the other side. So we're chasing that up, although I haven't been able to find Cedric Ryan on any of the nominal rolls relating to the Second Boer War. So that's a bit of a mystery that we need to establish. So, thank you for following on. We see that this could make an interesting video series of the restoration of this particular carbine, as close as possible to its original state. So we'll see what we can do. Cheers, folks.